Uncle Brian's expression was worth every late-night party, every doubtful grin. Each time I questioned whether I was making a error throughout the previous 7 years, but let's go back in time. My name is Natalie Tran. Throughout my life, I have never taken the easy route. Cousins were away in New York pursuing MBAs. I stayed in Austin and York and London, working in our family-run business full-time. Solaris is a pharmaceutical packaging company. At night, I completed online courses in medtech, in industrial systems design, automation, not because I was unable to visit. I was accepted to Stanford, but I thought it wasn't necessary for invention to come with it. I was aware of the six-figure tuition bill. Pharmaceutical manufacturing's future wasn't going to be achieved through traditional means. Precision would change it. Developing automation and predictive AI. I required both practical grit and technological proficiency to spearhead that transformation. You're still working on your YouTube degree. Uncle Brian used to make jokes while walking past the break room. He succeeded my dad as CEO. He lost his older brother to leukemia. The 15% stake that was left to me in 2018 was regarded as a formality. Our standing is. He would remind the board of everything we avoid taking chances on ill-conceived concepts from the warehouse, but I was focusing. As they pursued relationships based on vanity, I examined pain areas, delays, flaws, and waste. When I made my debut, I worked quietly. One unique modular automation system, which resulted in 82% lower mistake rates and increased throughput they were unable to overlook. The board didn't just accept the results. Observe that they changed course, but I wasn't the internet-savvy girl. No longer I was the woman who came to my aid. They named it Solaris after stagnation. Brian's business, yet they overlooked my. They neglected those shares when their father built it. Originated in the vision rather than. I never forgot my inheritance, and I never ceased construction for 3 years as the rest of the organization called me the. I worked quietly as a gadget-obsessed child, thoroughly and thoughtfully on something I understood that I might change the industry by day. I was the Natalie Tr procedure, a mid-tier 1. Buried in QA at Solaris Med Tech is an analyst. At night at my tiny duplex in East Austin, I was creating a future that no one else could see. That I referred to it as HIX hybrid. Intelligence, effectiveness, and learning. Exchange that isn't just another automated. HELIIX was an adaptive script, AI-powered infrastructure system that could predict production issues in advance of. Recalibrating batch sequences took place in real time and resource optimization. Dispersion throughout multiple views. Activities while surpassing FDA metrics for conformity. I submitted the patent. Uncle Brian had just my name. Never requested that I sign any IP contracts. Regarding Offmir's effort, he believed my tiny coding projects were innocuous pastimes. The consequences of that oversight would be dire. Him the week the patent was approved. A competitor company, Solaris, was in free fall. Started a machine learning optimization system that reduces production costs by our client's whole line. 2 significant contracts were being called. Uncle Brian, who was about to leave, shouted for. I sat close to an emergency board meeting. The rear still as he stumbled through ambiguous assurances and platitudes regarding processes that are leaner. Tyler, my cousin, recently received his MBA and placed as soon as the COO flipped. Anxiously going over his notes, they didn't Notion that 3 batches had already failed. Regulatory review, nevertheless, I did highlight them. Before we turned around, I stated unequivocally, taking a pause, we ought to talk about the underlying reason for the malfunctions and a Uncle Brian stiffened Natalie as a workable solution. I stood slowly since this isn't your moment. However, that's when you need me from my bag. I took out my name, bold patents. On top, then I linked my laptop to. Let me introduce you to H using the projector. I have a fully functional AI system called Lix. Been flying silently in one of our South Austin's off-grid test suites. Uncle Brian's face was depleted of color. You did what? He said abruptly. As I got up, I grinned at the QA implementation. I have written authorization to deploy as the lead. Restricted scope of testing procedures that you signed that policy update yourself last time. The screen behind me flashed for a quarter. To predict life metrics. Helix diagnostics efficiency readouts. Moving for the last 90 days, the platform has been operating in shadow mode. Let's work with our legacy systems. Analyze the results slide by slide. The data showed a 47% decline in per 95% decrease in human error per unit cost. Real-time regulatory compliance occurrences. Modifications with no abnormalities reported. This is a transformation, not a patch. Tyler leaped to his feet and spoke. There's no chance this is true, cracking. As I mentioned before, the FDA finished. Just past Thursday, I had a surprise audit. Have their preliminary results here, Uncle. This time, Brian smashed a palm on the table. Is an outright violation. In fact, I said projecting without authorization. The next slide's contract clause. Everything was carried out according to standard. Internal protocol in relation to the patent. Solely under my name, not Solaris. Your exclamations echoed throughout the confusion in the boardroom gave way to whispers. Chairs moved, heads turned. We could make this a commercial product, one investor said. Whispered, this merits its own endeavor. Another observed, I caught the glint on the arm. Not only financial gain, but potentiality. Uncle Brian appeared astounded. As Tyler lost his confidence, I stood up straighter and only heard but occasionally seen. Justice isn't best served by an argument. You're defending your position while those who rejected you are aware that weren't in your leg in the first place. I concluded my father-built presentation. My goal with Solaris Med Tech is to develop it with vision and accuracy. Based on the board's reaction, they were no longer considering me, not the niece but the background player. Technician, but the future is Natalie Tran. A board member of Solaris held up a hand. Do you genuinely think that foreign companies would already cover the cost of this technology? Have I responded well so far? This morning, I've been contacted by 3 important healthcare technology. Silence descended among conglomerates. They're really fascinated by the fact that intellectual property is not owned by Solaris. Uncle Brian's property rose so quickly that a chair made a loud scraping sound on the floor. This is ridiculous that you constructed this under our roof. That is part of the business's system. No, I spoke in a cool tone and developed each code for each circuit in my private time throughout the evenings I spend with my equipment as well as my funding. I delayed the patent records that show this technology is registered only to Solaris, not to Natalie Tran. MedTech, and since you didn't think about my work is valuable, yet you never asked for an My legal team's IP assignment agreement has everything on record. I selected the last slide. 2 projections of the planned trajectory, both with and without. Without it, we fail. The disparity was glaring. Recertification by the FDA within the year. We're running behind our rivals. Outdated systems using hay axe, I murmured, indicating the steep vertical slope. Recovering is not enough. We must lead the future. 10 years. At that moment, the boardroom doors revealed 3 well-dressed guests, entered Uncle Brian's rage and subsided into something even worse. Let me present David Chin. From Madna's Merck, Sarah Williams, and I said Thomas Rodriguez from Jane Tech. I grinned while pointing to the guests. Each of them has made official desire to purchase the HIX patent. Ask them to come see it today. Tyler's real-time performance improved from. This made his chair voice crack with panic. Is a private meeting for shareholders. I can bring in outsiders, but you can't. Calmly, I lifted a scuffed leather in response. Folder to which I am entitled as a stakeholder. Welcome outside observers to any demonstration that isn't confidential. The governance bylaws specify the. I made specific additions to ones my father authored. The guests gave a courteous nod and took gaze fixed on the projection in their seats. Screen. Thus this is the option I mentioned. Moving future, Solaris Med Tech is capable to license HLIX, which you will continue to use but under a market price contract, or I look at the trio. I choose to accept one of the biotech executives. Provides deals without the use of red boardroom or tape. Uncle Brian slammed the table on politics. This is. No, I said evenly, this is not extortion. Method that you mentioned, I'd never grasp with my online degree, which is meaningless. Held up a final, comprehensive document. And without a doubt, this is my official offer. Exclusive rights to license on my conditions. What terms did a board member inquire about? I answered, go forward, locking eyes with them with a reorganized board that symbolizes creativity rather than entitlement. Fear was not my father's inheritance, rather it was. Uncle Brian's jaw tensed in anticipation. No, I said, I wanted the title, but you want mine. The chief technology officer is one I've earned. Silence descended with a permanent board seat. As the tension increased, Tyler finally inquired. And I nodded in agreement if we reject it. Visitors, after which I walk through my system patent. Mr. Finch is an elder board member that I call the closest ally of my father. Cleansed his throat. Brian, the board must now cast its vote. Ryan scanned the room, finding no allies. Way out, his reign's end had come. Uncle Brian's spat isn't over. My voice was trembling with rage, so I said. Calmly enough, I nodded subtly to my lawyer, who came out and gave. A sealed envelope is given to each board member. Now that Brian was agitated, he snapped. Findings from an internal audit. I mentioned that it was commissioned 3 months ago. Found several inconsistencies in our compliance logs, inconsistencies that started in the same quarter that Tyler was elevated to the position of VP of Operations. Brian's colorless face exploded. His envelope, the whole results have filed to the FDA already, and Department of Health. I kept speaking. Stable and unambiguous, thus this is your option. Accept my offer of a license or provide an explanation. Why our internal logs are sent to federal officials don't correspond with the reports you submitted. There were anxious whispers in the room. Others started looking through their reports in. I remained motionless in shock in front of the space while the outdated system, founded on ego, secrecy, and intimidation. My father fell beneath its own weight. Told me once, don't shut them down. Outbuild them and outlast them. As the board requested an urgent vote, I looked at the panel of glass next to me for. Initially, I didn't only see I saw my father's reflection in mine. 6 months after receiving clearance, I stood in what? Formerly Uncle Brian's office, currently mine. Ignoring the efficient production floor beneath HIX at Solaris Med Tech. Coordinated in real time and ran flawlessly. Modifications, predictive analytics, and smooth batch automation because it's completely. The production of the rollout had grown by 250%. And the value of our stock soared. We were lading, not just surviving. Maria Spinosa's office door opened, revealing the newly appointed VP of Operations took over with a self-assured grin and a substantial folder in. Maria just left the FDA inspector's hand. Said Solaris with glittering eyes. The new biotech gold standard. Manufacturing they're even thinking about. Constructing future frameworks for compliance on. Our system, I grinned at Uncle's recall. The faint echo of Brian's voice in my head. How he once asserted that my weekend pastime would damage the company's reputation. He was mistaken about the technology regarding me. Regarding all of the consequences that followed. The crucial shareholder meeting had been. The board voted in a quick and harsh manner, unanimously to approve my suggestion rather than. Not just because to the patent, but also because. The audit revealed Tyler's reality. For months, operational reports were fabricated. After the regulator's review was finished, he was accused on several charges of. Because of fraud, Brian's inaction had made him accountable as well, and he quit within the week his tarnished reputation did. Did you see today's Wall Street Journal? Maria inquired as she handed the paper to the. Solaris Med Tech sets the headline. Following AI, industry benchmark shares jump. Revolution, and below that in smaller. Brian Tran, the former CEO, is subject to federal examination of the data leak. I glanced at. I put it aside because Brian wasn't I was no longer worried. Instead, I was focused on the future, such as the Mintron's launch. Innovation Fellowship in honor of my father to assist with future biotech engineers from marginalized areas, as well as unconventional academic routes. My Dr. Sarah's message buzzed on the phone. Chin's team at MIT was intrigued by Hicks' expansion into cell therapy, and 5 years ago I had clearer optimization. Didn't even receive a response to my emails. They were now asking for cooperation. When I heard a knock on the door, I returned to It was unexpectedly Aunt Helen Bryan's sister and an individual who had stayed silently aloof across the entire family. Natalie, she remarked in a political voice. Hesitating, have a minute. I signaled for her to take a seat. She hesitated at the uncertain barrier in an area that used to belong to her brother, and I simply wanted to express gratitude, she murmured quietly. For your assistance with my kid, Liam Bryans. The outlier has always been the youngest son. Quietly curious and more in the family. More interested in circuitry than stocks. He had been studying robotics, tickers. Years of meticulous online engineering. Concealing it from his dad following the transition in leadership, I learned about his rejected application hidden in HR. I brought Brian inside at his request. the Division of Systems Integration currently. Liam was doing well and had earned his position. Stated simply, like everyone else does. Helen's eyes were filled with tears. Regarding education, Brian was mistaken regarding you about the true meaning of leadership. She softened your father's voice by pausing. Would feel pleased if I looked about. There is no longer a mahogany desk in the office. Outmoded hierarchical, the room was occupied by with digital dashboards that are bright and energetic. Team images of the prototype schematics. Spanning generations, backgrounds, and adheres to my father's values. Honesty, tenacity, and bravery. Every blueprint on the planet was infused with inventiveness. A gentle chime sounded from my desktop. I recently finished fixing drift in temperature in one of the bays for formulating silent accuracy, which is another reason I regret the course I took. How is Brian? Asked, even though I was already familiar with the industry. News followed his every move. The most recent consultancy recently closed. He's thoughtful, Helen whispered softly. His investigations may have altered him for the. He's beginning to realize that the world no longer functions on ego, and she believed that Solaris Med Tech wasn't merely a worldwide biotech family legacy. Force worth more than $2 billion with. Leaders in the industry are licensing our platform, with students from all around the world submitting. The buzzing of my helper for our fellowships. The topic of the quarterly board meeting was, I started by reading about your. She mentioned her father's scholarship scheme at. Brian spotted the door as well, but he didn't say a word, but I believe that in his heart he finally obtains it when she departs. I proceeded. Nobody looked up from the floor. Was a positive indication of their pride and focus. Liam, who was driven, was there cautiously. Real-time calibration of one of HIX feedback modules in their entirety. Liam's framed is exactly where he should have been. Robotics engineering degree hung proudly displayed above his desk. Internet similar to my upstairs housed the. I asked calibration as I passed him. Smiled eyes that were nearly as focused as. Flawless, exactly like we intended. Zolix proposed making a micro-judgment to a sensor array, increasing the precision of the yield by an additional 3%. I observed as it actually recalibrated. At the time, it seemed unbelievable that I used to glue my sketches to the walls of the rental duplex had become a platform that MIT is currently researching and using as a potential regulatory model by the FD of biotechnology production, spurred by a woman with a degree earned online who just didn't trust her. Returning to my workplace, I grabbed a relic uncle out of the drawer. Brian Tran, CEO, was his previous name plate. I dropped the dense, hefty brass writing without a second's hesitation in the recycling. Believed that my name plate was on the sleek, contemporary Natalie Tran chief desk. Underneath its laser, a technology officer. The first line was engraved in small lettering. Some code I've written for HLIX in the past, when it was only some late night and a fantasy. Notes from the quarterly board lecture. Another meeting would begin shortly. Exciting quarter to report, but initially I sent a brief email to the coordinator of the scholarship program twice. The online degree slots for the upcoming year. Grants, and include this line in the no education is worthless without application. When combined with vision as the actual. Dethroning somebody wasn't the point of triumph. Was constructing a more successful thing. Is about purpose rather than ancestry. No custom ever began without someone who initially questioned the status quo. I passed on my way to the boardroom. Solaris Med Tech is our mission wall where, when integrity and innovation collide, integrity comes first. Education in silver script is never. My father's priceless vision is useless. Had been correct about this story all along. Talked to you and left a comment about your journey. Tell us below where and with whom you began. Questioned you and how you validated them. Incorrectly subscribe to receive more stories that remind us that you don't require authorization to alter the world.